You ever have one of those mornings where you wonder if the universe is playing some sick joke just for its own entertainment? Yeah, that was me, standing there at 6 a.m., sleep in my eyes, yesterday's shirt clinging to my back, staring at my fence getting annihilated by three guys with bolt cutters. No warning, no knock, just the crunch of metal, sparks flying, and the smell of diesel exhaust mixing with what used to be my vegetable garden. My pride and joy, by the way. That was the first clue this Tuesday was about to turn legendary, and not in the fun way. There, right in the middle of the chaos, was Delilah Thornfield, clipboard in hand, standing like she'd just solved world hunger. She's got this fake grin that tells you she's loving every minute. Her little minions rammed an 8-inch water main straight through my garden. The garden I poured 3 years and about 15 grand into. There goes the tomatoes. There goes my perfect rows of basil, the custom irrigation, all of it churning into mud. And Delilah, she announces, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, this is all for the community water project. My property, apparently, was just in the way. But see, what Delilah didn't know was this. I spent most of my adult life as a water engineer with the Army Corps, and if there's one thing I know better than heirloom tomatoes, it's water. She was about to learn the hard way who actually controls the supply around here. Let me rewind a second, though. My name's Marcus Blackwood, 52, Army Corps veteran. Now, just a contractor with bad knees and a stubborn streak. After decades of managing water systems where a single screw-up could flood an entire valley, I thought I'd finally earned a quiet life. My grandfather left me this 2.3-acre plot out in Pine Ridge Estates, a patchwork of lawns and old oaks just outside Denver. It's the kind of place where if you close your eyes, you can still smell his dried herbs and hear the rattle of his greenhouse windows. My granddad, he wasn't just a gardener. He was a strategist. His deed from 1987 spells out water rights in plain English and flat-out bans anyone from laying utilities without his permission. Elena, my daughter, she's 16 now, spends every summer with me. She's been building this garden since she was a kid, drawing up plans that put professional landscapers to shame. Every year, she'd show up with seed packets and dreams. That's what Delilah destroyed that morning. Not just my plants, but 3 years of sweat, late-night digging, and a kid's plans for her own little slice of Eden. Now, Pine Ridge, if you haven't lived in a place like this, picture the whole American dream. In suburbia, manicured lawns, HOA fees that keep creeping up, and the kind of neighborhood where most folks just want to grill on Sundays without trouble. And then there's Delilah. She's HOA president. Think iron fist in a pearl bracelet. Her husband, Rick's the city planning commissioner. Neat, right? She drives a BMW the color of a hospital, lives in a mansion at the end of cul-de-sac, and has made conflict of interest a family tradition. But the thing that really gets her? My tax exemption for agriculture saves me a couple grand a year, and she cannot stand it. Every morning, she sips her fair trade coffee and glares at my unsightly vegetable beds. She's never grown anything but resentment. 3 weeks before the attack, she sent me an official letter demanding I tear out my garden for aesthetic reasons. I explained, nicely at first, that my granddad's deed and agricultural status are rock solid. Her answer? Grandfathered rights don't override modern standards. Translation, we want you gone. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. The morning it happened, I heard engines idling in the dark and metal screeching, like a horror soundtrack for gardeners. By the time I got outside, heavy machines had already torn through Elena's best tomato patch. Delilah had her paperwork ready, waving emergency project notices that stunk of fraud. 4 grand in crops, gone before breakfast. What she didn't realize is, while she was playing politics, I was already 10 steps ahead. She didn't waste time. The moment I objected, she slapped me with a city complaint for interfering with public utilities. Rick's office sent an inspector, one of his guys. Barely looked at the mess before telling me it was all permitted. I showed him the deed. He shrugged. Then came the real kicker, a $2,500 fine for obstruction. Apparently, asking someone not to destroy your property is a crime in Pine Ridge. Next day, there's a restraining order claiming I'd threatened the workers. Court hearing in 3 weeks, and my lawyer fees started piling up before I'd even had a chance to catch my breath. But I'm not the type to just roll over. I called Janet Rodriguez, a lawyer whose whole vibe is make HOAs nervous. She dug in and, sure enough, found out the permit Delilah used listed my property as vacant city land. Not an accident, outright fraud. Then she spotted a clause in my granddad's deed I'd forgotten. Any unauthorized utility work voids the city's access to our water rights. Our water rights, by the way, include a chunk of the very spring the community depends on. Janet filed an injunction. The judge agreed, ordered all work stopped in 48 hours. Now here's where it gets wild. My cameras caught Delilah, at midnight, no less, sneaking her crew back in to keep laying pipe, even after the court order. The footage was clear as day. License plates, faces, the whole deal. They didn't just trespass, they kept building, extended the pipe another 200 feet onto my land. That's not an accident. That's a land grab dressed up as infrastructure. And right when I thought this couldn't get more surreal, my daughter's TikTok videos blew up. Footage of the garden destruction went viral. 15,000 views turned to 80,000 overnight. Suddenly, Pine Ridge wasn't just my headache. The whole metro area was watching. People started coming out of the woodwork. One neighbor, Florence, showed up with cookies and a folder stacked with years of her own records. Delilah's been mapping everyone's yards, she said, laying out hand-drawn maps and a decade's worth of HOA shenanigans. Turns out the community project was just the tip of the iceberg. Survey markers on backyards, soil samples snuck out at dawn, families realizing they were next in line for improvement. By the end of that week, we documented enough systematic harassment and fraudulent permits to choke a lawyer. We filed complaints, went to the press, even got housing advocates interested. But what really made my blood run cold? Delilah wasn't slowing down. She petitioned the city to declare my place blighted, a step toward just taking it by eminent domain. She scheduled a council meeting at warp speed, barely legal. Rick stepped aside, but his deputy ran the show. I walked in expecting a fair hearing, got a kangaroo court instead. She'd hired a photographer to make my land look abandoned, shot in the dead of winter, every angle making my garden look like a wasteland. She spun this story about how my stubbornness was killing community values. When my turn came, I didn't shout. I just laid out the deed, Elena's slideshow of the gardens, and then Janet brought out the real bombshell. Proof Rick's construction company had raked in $200,000 in no-bid contracts, all rubber-stamped by Delilah. The crowd was not happy, but Delilah had one more card. As I left, she cornered me in the parking lot, her BMW idling, a stranger snapping pictures of my truck. "Accidents happen," she hissed, purse clutched tight. The guy in the passenger seat, professional camera, face hidden. Elena got it all on audio. That's when I realized this wasn't about gardens or water anymore. This was about power, intimidation, maybe even something darker. Days later, another blow. HOA crews cut my water line deliberately. They forced my home onto their new main, managed the flow so my water pressure dropped to a trickle. Couldn't even run a shower, let alone keep my garden alive. Elena's plants wilted. Then came the bill, $8, $500 to restore service. It wasn't a repair fee. It was blackmail. Now, here's where having a water engineer's brain paid off. I spent some nights digging through old records and realized something huge. My granddad's water rights, secured decades before the HOA even existed, gave me direct access to Clearwater Springs, the same spring that supplied 70% of Pine Ridge's water. And get this, Delilah had been secretly trying to buy the springs herself, hoping to charge residents sky-high rates. But I got there first. The old rancher who owned the place, sick of her games, agreed to sell it to me. As word spread, neighbors losing water pressure, bills shooting up, elderly folks even hospitalized because of outages, the community turned. Delilah's solution was to raise fees, blame me for the mess, and hope nobody noticed her own sprinklers ran full blast while the rest of us rationed water. Florence, Dave the plumber, and a growing crew of angry neighbors started helping me gather evidence. Years of illegal votes, no-bid contracts, fake violations. Elena's videos caught the attention of state investigators. Janet built the case. Florence mapped every unauthorized property survey. Dave showed how Delilah's upgrades were deliberately sabotaging the system. The last straw was the financial records. Janet finally got them through court discovery. It was worse than we thought. Hundreds of thousands skimmed through emergency projects, all to Rick's company. Secret board minutes showed this wasn't just carelessness. It was a deliberate plan to push out agricultural land, kill exemptions, and pump up tax revenue for Delilah's side of the neighborhood. And the timing was perfect. By the day of the big annual meeting, I owned Clearwater Springs outright. Delilah strutted in, all pearls and PowerPoint, ready to gloat about resolving the water issue. I let her finish. Then I walked to the front, opened my folder, and held up the deed. As of last week, I own Clearwater Springs and all associated rights. You should have heard the gasp. 400 residents, cameras snapping, news crews rolling. Your contract for water expired almost a year ago, I said, waving the termination letter. Unless there's a new board and restitution, the supply ends in 30 days. Delilah's face went white. She called me a terrorist, accused me of holding families hostage, the same family she'd been squeezing for years. The vote was swift, 403-9 for complete board removal. The Attorney General's investigator stood up. The FBI came through the doors. Elena's live stream hit 127,000 viewers. Delilah was done. Within weeks, Florence was interim president. Fees dropped. Audits revealed the mess, and the real healing began. Delilah pleaded guilty to fraud, embezzlement, the works. Rick lost his job and the house. The best part? Watching my daughter's eyes light up as the garden came back to life, this time shared with families from across the city. Elena's documentary, built from all those viral videos, got picked up by a streaming service. College fund restored. The land, once ground zero for Delilah's power trip, became an education center, a place for neighbors to learn, connect, and defend themselves against the next would-be HOA tyrant. That's the lesson I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a fight. It's building something better in the rubble of what they tried to destroy. But I gotta ask, where's the line? When someone in power bends every rule, manipulates every system, how far should you go to fight back? Would you risk everything, your home, your peace, your reputation, just to make things right? Or do you walk away and let them win, counting on karma to do the rest? I'd love to hear what you think. If you've ever had to stand up to a bully with too much power or had your own run-in with a rogue HOA. Share your story, your wins, your losses. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that the more we speak up, the harder it is for people like Delilah to keep getting away with it.